Now you can see I'm in Cavalry, but we're going to start with a brand new project here. And one of the things I want to show you is how to create a project. When you first open up Cavalry, you'll have a scene like this. I actually have in the preferences set this to square because I've been doing a lot of square designs, but you can change the default composition settings by going to preferences, composition. One of the first things you want to do if you're starting a new project in Cavalry is go down to this project icon settings in the asset window. Here I've cleared all my settings already, so I'm going to go create. I'm going to choose Cavalry, and I'm going to choose the tutorials folder that I already have, which chooses location, and then you can name your project here. And what this will do is set up a folder for you that has scenes. Also, all your new scenes in this project will be saved to the scenes folder. Anything you render will sort of default into this render, and this is also where your autosaves are. This will come in handy later when we start the render automation. The next thing you're going to want to do is create the spreadsheet. So I've already created this. The way you want to format these is to have the title of the column at the first row of the spreadsheet. So here, the name column and the title column. And these are 6 of the people that are part of the Cavalry group. From here, you want to go to share, and then make sure that this link is changed to say anyone on the internet with this link can view. And then copy this link because you'll need it here in a minute. So back in Cavalry, you can import this Google Sheet. If you right click Assets window, go to Import Google Sheet, you can then paste the link you previously copied and create a new asset sheet. Now an asset sheet stores all this information and is live. So if I make any edits to that Google Sheet, all I have to do is come up here, hit reload, and it'll update the spreadsheet. While we're at it, let's save this project. Just hit Command S, call this L3s, hit save. It'll save it to that scenes folder. Because this is lower thirds and it's probably for horizontal content too, I'm going to go to the composition settings here, which is in the scene window, this little icon. You can also get there by hitting Command K, and then you can change the width of the composition to be 1920. So how do we access? Well, it's all formatted as strings, so we're going to need to use text objects to really display this information. So we'll start by holding Option and pressing the text icon here, and then it'll bring up a new text object centered in the scene. And this will be the name, so I'm going to set it to baseline. That'll be on top. The next thing I'll do is drag this asset onto our timeline. So it's Scene Group LTD Sheet 1. You can see up here what's in this setting. So we have column title. This is where we can choose between the name and the title columns. So we're going to check fixed row because this is how we're going to offset the index. And we can't see anything yet because we need to link this up. From here, we'll connect this sheet object to our text object. If you just drag the little blue icon onto text and go up to string, now you'll see Adam Gens, this has been updated and reflecting the information in the spreadsheet. So if we go back to the spreadsheet, we can see we changed the row index and we're getting all the names. Great. Now we want to do the exact same thing for the titles column. To do this, we'll just duplicate both of these objects. If you hold Shift, select them, hit Command D, and then in the second version of the sheet, you're going to change the column title to title. And then this link is relative, so we'll have to update that. We'll unlink this and reconnect this. And we'll change that here. And because this is lower third and we're going to design it, we'll just half the font size. 36. Now it's looking good. While we're here, let's label our layers. So we know changing the index will update which row is being sampled here. But how do we automate this into a render system? Cavalry's got a great way to do this called dynamic indexing. To access it, we'll need to go to the render manager, which is Command B, or in File, Render Manager. And you'll see this dynamic index and dynamic index offset. This is grayed out, but it can drive something. So we'll bring up the sheet asset in the timeline, the first one, and we'll link dynamic index to row index. And then do the same thing for the titles. Now, when we offset this index, you should see this is all updating. Your Cavalry might not be operating the exact same way that mine does. I've changed a couple settings. One of them in the attribute editor is this live mode, which automatically adds selected layers to the attribute editor, which works a lot like After Effects in that when you select the object in the timeline, that is the attribute editing options that you see. Versus the native way, I believe, is that when you click or double click, it will store it indefinitely until you exit out. You can get around some of this by keeping this live and then pinning things if you need to have two up at a time. And then just unpinning them. All right, to keep flushing out the system, let's add current composition to the render manager where we have a couple more options. Here there's 4 tabs: output, format, dynamic, compositions. See dynamic. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, let's rename this composition to L3s as well. Here in the dynamic tab, just check dynamic render, and then in number of renders, to keep this automated, if you add a row to the spreadsheet, we can take the count of the rows in the spreadsheet from one of the assets, the spreadsheet assets. Here's row count. So link row count to number of renders, and now we've got a bulletproof system that will update it if anything changes in your spreadsheet. The most likely use case I think people would have for this workflow is to export these with alpha. So what we're going to do is go to Format, go to QuickTime, and then both 4x4s can contain an alpha channel. So just use ProRes 4x4, save a little bit of space. And then in the output setting, to keep the files named, we're going to have to do a couple things. Cavalry's got some really cool render tokens for automating file naming as well. In the file name, you can right click and see all of them here. You can also go to Cavalry, docs.cavalry.scenegroup.co and search render tokens, and there's a whole list of them here and explains what they do. Here we'll choose project, tutorials, underscore, right click, go composition. And then I want to add the name from the row, but there's not a way to do that within the file name itself. So I'll have to use another Cavalry object called the string generator. One of the things you can do is hit Command period to access essentially like the commander, similar to Cinema 4D, that'll let you search for any of the Cavalry objects. So here we're going to search string generator. It defaults to value, which is a number-based string generator. I'm going to choose none because I'm only going to need the prefix and the suffix. But if you wanted to, you could use formatted string. We can go into details later about how exactly to use that. We'll keep it simple for now with none. And in the prefix, I'm going to copy my render tokens. And in the suffix, I want to link my names column. So I'll output scene into string generator, and it'll give me the 2 outputs that it could possibly drive, and I'm going to choose suffix. So now this is saying these are the tokens underscore my dynamic index name. Now I can output the string generator directly to the file name, and you can see here this is what a preview of our output file is going to be. One other trick. So to keep Cavalry from binning or putting each file into its own folder, you're going to update this using the dynamic index. So it'll include what index number of the dynamic index is in the file. So left bracket dynamic. And this is a little workaround for not binning everything. So it's tutorials L3, index, then the name. Great. Now really everything is set up to go. One thing I've noticed is that Cavalry doesn't really have a way to look at a background like After Effects does, but also export on alpha. So before you export, you just need to drop your alpha down to 0 on your background. And this is ready. Just for fun, I'm going to render this out and show you the files. Obviously this doesn't look great right now, so Now that the system is all set up, we can go in and tweak some things to make this look a little bit more like a design. So I'll open the Finder window. Let's go to Cavalry Tutorials, Renders. And look, one click, 6 files, all with alpha. So I think this is pretty cool. Now let's level it up with some things that Cavalry can do pretty well that might be a little harder to accomplish in After Effects. And delete those because they look like trash. Now let's set up some guides so we can position this. Guide is in the composition window. I have this set to 108 already. I'm going to grab both of these and just drag them, let's say 80%. One of the things you're going to want to do as you're going through this process is also just check to make sure that as they change, nothing gets too wonky or out of control. These names are pretty manageable. Let's start with a text animator. Working with text animators in After Effects can be a little janky. Even though it's one of the more powerful systems that After Effects has built into it, there are certain handcuffs that just don't allow you to do some of the things that would seem rather intuitive. So we'll try with a new text animator in Cavalry. The way to animate text individually is to select this text item, go here to Deformers, and then you're going to add a new deformer, and at the bottom select Submesh. Submesh allows you to essentially treat each vector object as its own mesh, and you can choose which level at which this is being affected. So it could be words, it could be characters, it could be the whole thing. There are many layers under which we could say these are grouped and access them separately. Now I want to do this where I have an overshoot and decay, and that's pretty hard to do with text animator. It's like there's not an easy way. It gets kind of janky where you have one go over, a second animator pull it back under, and a third equaling it all out. I just want to be able to keyframe it and then manipulate my keyframes and then affect these things this way. So I'm going to go to 50, set a keyframe. That's where I want the final Y position to be. Let's bring this down. Below this title, say -120. For overshoot and decay, you can make the curve manually. In After Effects, you would probably use an expression, a lovely one that I think if you've been doing this long enough, you're all familiar with. We can do this entirely without expressions with magic easing. So right-clicking on these keyframes, you have a couple options here. Choose magic easing and then spring out. And now what that does is essentially creates your overshoot and decay curve naturally. That's cool, but I want to affect it on a per character basis. Well, because this is a keyframe animation, all I have to do is really offset each character in time, and the way that I can do that is actually within the submesh itself. There's a time offset attribute. So here I'll right click on time offset. I'll choose stagger, and you can see already it's changing. Now in this stagger, because this is starting at 0, I really have to use negative values for the maximum offset. So I'm going to say -15, and we'll scrub through this. And look, that looks pretty good. It's going the wrong way though. To fix that, all I have to do is go into this graph, which is essentially saying affecting index 0 to the final index. This is how I want them to handle these values. I just want to flip that. Great. Now I just want to copy this. If I duplicate this submesh, let's drag it under title and then drive this as this deformer. Mirror each other exactly. Let's offset this, bring this to 25. I'm working in PAL frame rate because I just can do the math easier. It's kind of like the metric system, and it's the native that the Cavalry guys use. They're based out of London, and I'm getting used to it, and I think I like PAL. Cool. Now we have offsetting animation. Now I also want to, essentially any keyframes that I now add to the submesh transforms will be staggered this way. So what I can do is take the opacity. Let's go 5 frames in. We'll be at full. Start at 0. And then play that. I don't really like the fade. I kind of want it to just spring on. So one thing I can do is in the graph editor, I can select both these keyframes, and you have a lot of options here for creating easing. Let's convert to Bezier, and that way it will shoot into existence pretty quickly. Let's ease this one too and make it even more dramatic. Now these titles are appearing out of thin air. And then for this I can just copy the opacity keyframe, paste it here, drag it up in line. Cool. It's pretty good. What's one more thing that's kind of hard to do in After Effects that Cavalry can make short work of? Bounding boxes. It's called Submesh Bounding boxes. So here, if I go back Command period, I'll look for Submesh Bounding box. Great. And I think we'll need our text object on top of that. In the Submesh Bounding box, under shape, you have input shape. You're going to drag your name into the input shape. They're all the same color, so let's fix that. Go to fill, change this to black. Name, let's go change this to white. Now look at that. I kind of think it's fun the way that it resizes when the shapes are changing. Adds a little extra bounce to it. That's too tight. So in the Submesh Bounding box, you have expand options. Let's look at this full. If you hold Option when you're dragging, you can expand both parameters equally. Let's say 10 and 10. Now, I don't like the hard lines, so let's add a bevel to this to round off the corners. So if you go to Deformers under the Submesh Bounding box, choose Bevel. Now we got rounded corners. And I don't need it to be that extreme. Let's say 10. Cool. I can literally duplicate this again and do the same thing we just did. Here in the submesh, just cancel out that link, drag your new title into there. Now we could stop there. But one of the cool things about Submesh Bounding Box is that it gives you access, like the submesh does, to all of the different levels in which these vectors exist. So I can come here in the Submesh Bounding Box for the name and say level, change that to 2. Now it's going down a layer from the whole text object into each word individually. That looks good. This is what I wanted to do. You can actually go character by character if you wanted. Change that to level 3. And now we've got character-based bounding boxes that follow everything. But let's keep it at word. And then these are a little too close for comfort. So in the text object itself, I'm going to change the word spacing and just spread those out. And I'm probably going to need to do that for the title too. First, let's fix this to say level 2. Title, spread. Now this was an error I noticed. Even though these are separated by a space, this dash is not being spaced out by the word spacing. I don't know exactly why that is, but there are workarounds. So what I'd like to do is just head back into our spreadsheet and say, instead of this slash, founder and director. It saves automatically. Now if I go back up into the sheet, I'll say reload. Now I have them as individual words that are being spaced separately. That might be a little extreme. Let's go there. Now I don't want both to be this black color, so let's change the title's box color to something a little bit more on brand. Now one of the ways you can access color in Cavalry is through arrays and palettes. Cavalry has a built-in palette here, and these are all up here in this color section. And if this palette is active, you can choose this little burger and then create array from palette. And what that'll do is it'll create a color array object. Now, a color array object can feed individual indexes these colors based on the object's index. So to show you how the color array works, let's take the color array in the timeline and connect it to the Submesh Bounding box and choose fill color. Now, I don't know why this is either, but for some reason we can't access each of these objects as an individual index yet. So the way to work around this is with the Submesh Deformer again. So in the Submesh Bounding box, choose Submesh Deformer. Now this will give us access to color overrides. So in the Submesh Deformer, choose Fill and then activate Replace Fill. And now drag your color array onto the submesh, and you've got individual colors on each of these. And I think that's looking pretty good. I want to add actual color to the scene though. So let's clear some of this out. You can see it's counting. Index 0, 1, 2 is gray, white, black. Now I want to make the third index actually green. So I will right click in this color and just delete selected attribute. So now we've got green. And then this is kind of extraneous, so we can just delete these. None of these are more than 3 words, so let's just check. One last thing I have to do, because I don't want to see these boxes in the beginning, we'll change the text scale. So in the submesh, choose scale Y, drag that 5 seconds in, set this to 0. Just take graph editor, choose using. Great. And then copy scale Y to the submesh of the title. It looks like because Vejodarsky has this J underhanging, the bounding box is a little bigger. So let's drag the title down just a smidge to here. This is the importance of checking all of your renders. You know, I think that it's not lining up here on the left, and part of that is because I use the same settings for expand size, and I think this can be a little smaller. So we'll go 5 by 5. Make sure the scale Y is in the right place. Cool. I think that about does it. These all look good. Now we're ready to just hit export and get 6 new titles. Oh wait, there was a typo. Andre, his name actually has an accent over the E. Somebody update that. Option E, E. And now this will save, reload, and now we fixed Andre's title. That's how easy it is. Now hit render all, and you've got yourself a lower thirds package. Well, make sure if you're checking the output index, you don't muck that up. I wonder what's gonna happen though. So I forgot to update it. No, yeah, it's busted. Make sure you set your dynamic index offset back to 0 before you start, and then hit render. Here we go.